Hello, my name is Vivienne Artz and I'm the Chief Privacy Officer at Thomson Reuters. I'm also very proud to be the President of Women in Banking and Finance. And I'm delighted today to be joined by Chris Plumley, who is partner of the real estate division of Trowers and Hamlins, and we're going to be talking about transforming women's leadership in the law. So Chris, I'd like to start off with a question around mentoring and sponsorship, which are two very, very key themes. And what are your thoughts about the role that each of those plays for aspiring leaders?
Okay, mentoring is let's start with that because it's a vital part. I've been doing this for 20 years now and I still work with a mentor myself. And you know, I'll catch up with her every 6 months or something like that, and we'll bounce around ideas and we'll use it as an opportunity to just test the direction of travel. So I think if you're going to be in any leadership role, mentoring for yourself is important, and then transposing that down into the team. So for example, the mayor in Birmingham wanted to set up a mayoral mentors program, and that then tied into social mobility, for example. So I mentor in a school and in a college and at a university. So I think that constant referral back, that guidance, that ability to learn from one another is vital. And also particularly in the law, because the law is a lonely place at times. One of the pressures that we all feel is, you know, the ability, we have to get it right, we have to, you know, be seen to be getting it right, and there is still sometimes that little nervousness that people express of going it alone. So sometimes that ability to work in a safe environment with and have mentors available to you is absolutely vital.
And do you think it needs to be a formal mentoring program? Because I know when I started off in law, there wasn't a formal mentoring program, but when I reflect back on my own experience, I see that actually a number of the relationships I had were mentoring relationships.
Mentoring can sometimes be seen as a remedial act.
Yes.
You only need mentoring if you're getting something wrong. And that's an attitude and a culture that we're certainly trying to change in Trowers and Hamlins. And we've rolled out a mentoring program for all levels, whether people sort of want it or not, because sometimes people don't realise the value of a mentoring relationship. It is still seen as a weakness somehow. So I think getting over that and realising the value of it, I think is particularly important in our profession.
Fantastic. And do you think that sponsorship is the other side of the coin of mentoring, or do you think that's very different? Because I think sponsorship is critical to the advancement in terms of leadership.
I wouldn't necessarily see a distinction between the two. And I know they are often perceived as different. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think the mentoring element, a lot of it's on the mentee to learn and grow and develop. And then on the sponsoring side, it's about having that voice in the room, somebody who's actually going to speak up for that individual.
Well, that's why in the way that we look at sort of future partners or promotion candidates, whatever, we have a set of criteria against the skills. So we will always be trying to encourage at every stage of someone's career a different approach to attaining those skills or highlighting the ability to do it. You have to give people the opportunity to shine.
Chris, you're involved in a lot of initiatives across the legal industry which promote equality on lots of different levels. Can you tell me a little bit about some of those?
Well, most recently and probably most proudly, I'm an advisory board member for Thomson Reuters for the leadership program here. And I'm particularly keen to do that because I think it ties into a number of things I'm particularly passionate around, particularly not just the gender equality, but the social mobility platform. Yes. Because I think the two are intrinsically linked. So I'm very proud to be part of that. I also work within Trowers and Hamlins as part of our Trowers Includes program, which is a program we've run for a number of years now, but it's not a sort of policy push, it's a culture push. So part of the Trowers Includes ethos is around making sure that we create the right cultural environment to be an inclusive business. And so I, along with one of my other partners, lead the social mobility platform for that too, which is the newest branch of what we're doing. So we're just starting that program. But I'm particularly passionate about that because I come from humble beginnings.
Chris, I really like the way you use the term culture rather than policy. Policy seems to indicate driving behaviours, whereas culture is the whole firm. I thought that was incredible. Can you tell me a little bit more?
Yeah, if you want everybody to buy into something, people buy into culture. Cultures drive behaviours, policies don't. Policies are about how you order paperclips. We made a conscious decision to have everybody included in this program. It's why we call it Trowers Includes in our business, because we want everybody to be a part of it. If you do that, what you're doing is embedding the culture that we already had and the values of our business. So that made it an easier transition, because we were sort of codifying, by writing it down, we were codifying what we'd already done as a business.
Fantastic. So at Trowers Hamlin, you're obviously a real male leader, and they are leading the way in terms of changing the culture to make it much more inclusive and to break down the barriers for women succeeding in the law. What can other male leaders in the rest of the legal sector do to make that difference?
I think any leader, irrespective of gender, because that sort of presupposes that there are still, we are dominated by male leaders, and we aren't. I mean, my business, we have a female senior partner, a female managing partner, a female head of operations, female head of marketing, female head of real estate.
But that's not the case in most law firms.
Well, that's why I make the point earlier about I sometimes feel a little bit blessed and wonder if we're a special place, because I hear some of the stories and examples that people have given today at the conference, and I am deeply saddened by some of the examples. When you hear examples and think, surely not still. Now, we, like every other business, we've still got ways to go. But when I look at, to come back to your original question, when we look at the skills that leaders have to have and what we can do to influence, it is about being, it's about listening, I think. Mm-hmm. And it sounds really basic, some of this stuff, but we work in a way which we listen to our team. We have an inclusive method. So team meetings, for example, the agendas are generated by the team. If we have a 360 kind of feedback culture, so if people find things aren't working, we encourage that discussion. And I think any leader in any business has to do that. And it's the difference between a leader and a boss, isn't it? A boss will find a direction and tell everyone that's the direction we're going in, whereas a leader will constantly be listening and looking
Bring everyone with you.
Yeah, make sure everyone's on the bus.
Oh, fantastic. So what advice would you give to an aspiring leader, and would that advice change whether you were speaking to a man or to a woman?
The first thing is don't stop learning and don't stop listening. As I alluded to earlier, I still work with a coach and with a mentor who I constantly refer back to, because you will never, you're never complete as a business person, as a lawyer, as a leader in any business. There's always new stuff you can learn. I think the other thing to highlight and acknowledge is a lot of senior people, usually the more senior people, have to acknowledge and suffer from a thing called imposter syndrome. The more senior you get, it is very common for senior people to think, I've got here by accident. There is this series of flukes over the last 20 years that have got me to this point, and any day now I'm going to be found out because I'm an imposter. I don't deserve to be here. And it's a lovely moment when you can pat yourself on the back and say, do you know what? Actually, this is all right. I'm okay at this point. But that background fear, that fear of failure, that fear of that prevents people from reaching out and talking. Because I think that's one of the biggest reasons why people get a bit insular in leadership. And if you're insular in leadership, you've stopped listening. And the final thing from a tips and hints point is be brave. Lord Kerslake, I once heard him talk at an event, and he said, it's easier to seek forgiveness than permission, so proceed until apprehended. And I think for any leader, you've got to have courage in what you do. And sometimes you'll get it wrong. You know, I think Kodak used to say, we accept the fact that for every 10 decisions we make, 3 will probably be wrong. But that's okay. because we're human beings. And as long as you do it with, not reckless, but I think just having that bravery to create your own path and to keep along it, brackets caveated with working alongside colleagues and making sure you don't go off on your own. But that bravery, I think, is really important. And would I say anything different for men and women? No. You're either a leader or you're not. And the skill sets apply to both. And I think the more that we create rules or premises to apply to different gender, the more we are perpetuating the point that we're trying to fight against. That actually gender should not be relevant for the jobs that we're doing.
Chris, we've heard a lot today about millennials and their specific behaviours and expectations in the workforce. And we've also been discussing gender balance and equality in the workforce. Do you see there's a convergence between those two streams? There's some similarities, particularly around agile working. Tell me, what direction do you see?
I think it's a tremendous opportunity, but it's also a big risk because the workplace is changing, the profession is changing, the client demands are changing. And if we, as an entire profession, if we don't recognise that and we don't see the sort of societal shift and we stick to the same working practices we've had since the 1930s, businesses will really struggle because they won't attract staff, they won't attract the right talent. So it is something we're particularly aware of. I find we've done a number of training sessions, for example, where we've looked at how millennials communicate, which is different to how people of my generation communicate. The sentence structures are different, the technology is different, the platforms that they use are different. So we have to continue to adapt. But that works if you're in a listening environment because you're listening to what people say to you. And the businesses who do that will be great. The businesses who don't listen to that change in parameter will struggle, I think. I think it also ties into the whole thing of work-life balance. Agile working is now something which is a norm, whereas previously, it wasn't, and it was an exception to the rule. Now everybody works from home or works remotely or what have you. Secretarial staff do that now, which years ago was unthinkable.
It's been an absolute sea change, I'd say, in the last 10 years.
I think so too. And technology's made that very accessible. We do FaceTime and Skype and things like that, which for meetings which we wouldn't do before. I can work at home and still join a team meeting and still be present. Because I'll be on video or what have you. So there's all of that kind of thing. I think it's just an element of moving with the times, which is making our businesses better and a better environment for people.
Well, I love the way you've ended on such a positive note. It's about making our businesses better. Thank you so much, Chris. I've really enjoyed our discussion today.
Thank you.